Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, Cole, and I are with you talking about when is it the right time, if ever, to worry about Zach Edey. Can't wait for the completely rational response to our conversation about that. Then Damichael's going to provide us an injury report update going into Grizzlies-Nets tonight. The rare home and home back-to-back for the Memphis Grizzlies. 2 home games back-to-back coming up Wednesday, Thursday night. Lots of fun stuff to discuss. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, co-host of Locked On Grizzlies, also a contributor over at Grizzly this season. Very happy to be joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Friendly reminder that he is the award-winning Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Very happy for my partner. Well-deserved accolades, and it's always nice when he and I get a chance to talk to you, dear listener, dear viewer, about the Memphis Grizzlies here on this here podcast. Friendly reminder that if you want to catch us talking to you about the Grizzlies in a different way, your favorite Grizzlies podcast now has a newsletter. We're introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter. It's a one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, literally anywhere you get a show, subscribe, audio, visual, it is all good. Make Damichael and I a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Damichael, this is our last episode together for the month of October. You're going to close it out for us here these next couple of days as I close out my football regular season. Quick side note, fun to say regular season. Your boy might be in the playoffs.
Playoff, coach?
Playoffs?
Okay.
We're talking about playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? He's trying to win a game. Do you get that reference?
On you. Yeah.
Do you get that reference?
Come on, man. That's Jim Moore now.
Okay. I just know you're a young
I'm young. I'm young, Joe, but come on.
Okay. So anyway, I'm closing up a potential playoff berth over the next couple of days. Shout out to the young men that I work with. They're doing a great job. Young people that I work with. So closing that out over the next couple of days. Hopefully, Damichael, well, not hopefully. Hopefully we make that postseason a reality. And I know that Damichael is going to take care of everybody here on Locked On Grizzlies. I'll be back on Monday. But before we get there, we have a great Wednesday episode, partner. And we're going to lead off with, we were talking a little bit before we started recording the show, how even at my advanced blogger podcaster age, I still have the ability to be a bit of a lightning rod among Grizzlies fans. I did that again on social media without even really trying on Tuesday, if I'm being honest. I don't really think I said anything that outlandish and people were mad at me. But I'm going to be mad. I'm going to get people mad at me here. And it's not going to be on purpose again, because I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
Zach Edey is somebody who was drafted 9th overall by the Memphis Grizzlies. And maybe I am guilty of this. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Maybe I have overinflated him a bit in terms of his significance to what this team is trying to do. But when the signing of Jay Huff is met with people honestly asking, does this mean Zach Edey plays less? You have a 26-year-old guy who has been a G League staple for the last 3 years of his professional basketball career.
Yeah.
And you have a guy who was the two-time reigning National Player of the Year at college basketball. To even ask that question should be silly, but if you look at his box scores, Damichael, Zach Edey has not played a ton of consistent minutes to begin this season. What are your takeaways on that? Again, you've seen every game that the Grizzlies have played in person so far. What is your read on Zach Edey? And when is it fair to start asking the question? I'm not even going down the road of a bust or anything like that. I'm not talking about that at all. It is what he is capable of being for the Grizzlies, a team that is trying to compete right now.
Yeah, none of this is really too surprising to me. And when I say that, it's not trying to emphasize being right or anything, but you remember in the offseason, one of the things that I said on the show was if you look at the history of the development of big men in the NBA, especially since 2015, I wrote a story about it too at the Commercial Appeal. And if you look at the rookies' numbers, I mean, Derek Lively, prime example. You know, people looked at him last year and was like, man, that's a really impactful rookie, and he averaged like 8 points. You know, so I don't think we overstated it, Joe, because it's the truth. If this team wants to reach its goals, Zach Edey has to be really good. That's point blank, period. When they were struggling to rebound against Houston, you know, Zach Edey wasn't playing much. And he ended up, you know, getting 9 rebounds in that game, 4 offensive boards or whatever. But it was kind of some mop-up duty stuff, whatever the case may be. Even in the other couple games that they've struggled on the glass, same thing, wasn't really playing much. Over the course of time, at some point, he's going to have to get more minutes. He's going to have to be more forceful, impactful. Now, let me meet you halfway, Joe, because this is where I think we both kind of agree. And some people probably disagree with us, is he wasn't really the first choice for either of us. But we had different first choices. I think your guy was Donovan Clingan, who looks, you know, pretty good so far. Mine was
the one that got away.
Look at you.
Dreaming.
And my guy was Khalil Ware, right? Who
also is doing some decent things for Miami and limited opportunity.
He's going to be really good. He's going to be good. I still think he's going to be really good. And I mean, Summer League, he was probably the best one of those 3 players. But anyways, with all that being said, it's fair to question the idea that this Grizzlies team is emphasizing pace, speed, and that is so not traditionally what Zach Edey's game has been. I remember we were in Nashville, and I talked about it on here too, Joe. We talked about it because I think you questioned it a little bit when they said, "Oh, you know, Zach Edey is running up and down the floor really well," and then we see the first chance that Taylor Jenkins get against that in the last game against the Bulls, the first time a team says, you know what, we're gonna put a quick lineup out here, and we're gonna put Zach Edey in some space, and let's see what the Grizzlies do. And Taylor Jenkins didn't hesitate. Took him out in the first half. We didn't see Zach Edey in the second half. It was get a towel, sit on the bench, and that was it. So I talked to Taylor Jenkins after practice about that. Talked to Zach Edey yesterday after practice as well, and getting their perspectives. And there's 2 things that I agree with here, and one I really don't. And I'll start with the one that I really don't agree with, and that was with Taylor Jenkins basically saying that it was basically it probably was a 1-game thing, with the way that happened. That wasn't his exact words. I wrote about it, so you can see the exact quote. But he basically kind of referenced the point that they're really, they've kind of drilled Zach Edey on the idea that his role is going to be very flexible. I don't really agree with that part, because you remember, and I remember, when Zach Edey first got here, and Zach Kleiman, what did Zach Kleiman say? Zach Kleiman said, we're going to be the imposers, right? When teams try to go small, we're going to be the ones that's going to make them go bigger. But as soon as Chicago put that flexible lineup out there, I think what happened was what me and you kind of thought would happen. And I say that to say I still think the Grizzlies made the right decision, because when Jaren Jackson Jr. was at the 5 in that game, the Grizzlies were obliterating them. What happened was Jaren only played 24 minutes, which you touched on a little bit, and that was kind of the problem, more so than Zach Edey not being on the floor. And here's the other thing. Talk to Zach Edey, because I want to end it on a good note, then I'll get back to you, Joe. But here was the other thing. Zach Edey is improving, and he's feeling himself improve. And for him, it's going to be so many little, as he said, nuances that showcase him, that showcase where he's improving at. For example, he's never going to be the most nimble foot speed guy. Like that's just not who he is. He's 7'4", 290 pounds. But how do you make up for that at his size? Because there are other big guys who aren't really the most nimble, but you understand angles. You understand, hey, if I can get to that spot over there and cut this guy off, I have a great chance at contesting this shot. If I go up and press up on this on this guard, even though he's going to drive past me, I have Jaren Jackson Jr. behind me, and I can just shift over defensively, and I did my job. Once he starts to understand the little nuances like that, he'll be fine in those areas. One thing he said to me is, he said that I look at myself on film every single day, And what I'm noticing is when I go back and look at myself from a week ago, each time it's a very noticeable difference. And I truly believe that because of what I said when I first started talking. Bigs progress slower, and the numbers reflect this. I mean, point guards too, traditionally, but bigs in today's NBA progress a little bit slower. You just don't see guys come in the league averaging double-doubles. And that's kind of what's happening with him. And remember, Joe, I said we played a long game with Zach Edey, right? That was what I said. And right now you can kind of get by him being, playing the way that he's played. They're 2-2. But at the same time, when March gets here, second half of the season, February, you're going to need him playing 25-plus minutes when you got to go against Anthony Davis, Sabonis, Zubac, the way he's playing right now, and all those dudes.
The biggest issue for me, and you touched on it there, it makes me think of the movie Watchmen, not this miniseries on HBO, but the movie itself. And other films and television shows have said similar quotes, like when a group of people in a jail gang up on somebody and they have like superpowers or whatever, and they beat the crap out of the people and say, "You guys aren't. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me."
Yeah.
Right? Look at this perspective on Edey. That's essentially what Zach Kleiman said in his press availability that you referenced earlier.
Right.
Yeah, other teams are going to have to deal with Edey. It's not just us having to deal with how they.
It's one of those things that sounds good when you say it.
Right. Well, okay. So far, it's been. Taylor Jenkins being the one that blinks in that game of chicken.
Yep.
The question is when to wonder about Zach Edey. For me, it's not even necessarily this season. And that might seem like a cop-out, and I'm not trying to do a cop-out. I want Edey to play.
So if he isn't playing well in February, I'm wondering.
I'm with you. Well, I agree with you.
This is a big season for this core.
Yeah. This season, right? Mm-hmm. But I also, to be a fly on the wall of these draft meetings, because I think that there may be a disconnect at times between how the coaching staff, Taylor Jenkins is well aware, he's not a dumb man. He needs to win. I have a sneaky suspicion that Taylor Jenkins isn't always like, you know what? I need to win. But at the same time, I'm going to play my best player 24 minutes, right? Like how much of this, and you would probably be more able to tell me off the record how onto something I might be here. Sometimes I'm guessing there's a disconnect between how a coach would want to handle a situation and how the coach is being told to handle the situation. And that's, understandable to an extent. You have to do your job. But sometimes, depending on how the Grizzlies, we've talked about the Grizzlies zigging when everybody else zags.
Yep.
How relevant is that to the Edey conversation? I think that's a really interesting thing to keep an eye on. So when are you going to wonder about Zach Edey, guys? Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on X at Damichael C for Damichael, at Joe Mullinax for me. Let us know when you're going to start to wonder about Zach Edey's place on the Grizzlies. I'm not that worried about it even necessarily this year. Sounds like Damichael is thinking it better be springtime for some Zach Edey significant growth going into the playoff push.
Mm-hmm.
This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Basketball's awesome live. Damichael, you've watched a lot of live basketball lately. Going to a Major League Baseball game, the World Series would be such a dream. But I like hockey, man. The chill of the ice, the slam of the boards, going and seeing my Washington Capitals, maybe go down to Nashville, take on the Predators would be a blast. And I think it would be something that I would be interested in looking into again, especially if I'm getting a chance to use the Gametime app. Gametime Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You can toggle on the all-in pricing option, showing the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and you can also get the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. So, Damichael, injury updates. You're the beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. You're somebody who's tuned in with this particular aspect of the team better than most. We know that Zach Edey, who we just got done talking about a little bit, is a new addition to the injury report. We also got a bit of an update on a Vince Williams Jr. timeline sort of situation. Let our audience know where these guys fit going into tonight's game against Brooklyn, which we'll cover more here later on in the program.
Yeah, we actually got a lot to discuss in this segment, which shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone when we're talking injuries with the Grizzlies. But let's start with Zach Edey. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way right now. I think with Zach Edey, for one, I'll say that I kind of was mildly surprised that he was included on the injury report because I saw him at practice just roughly 3 hours before the injury report came out, and big man was moving. And he was doing some 3-point drills where he was drifting to the corner. The assistant coaches throw the pass. He's breaking a real big sweat. He was doing some drills in the paint. They throw the ball off the glass. He grabs it, puts it up, kind of some putback stuff. And it's intense, right? He's grabbing the ball, put it right back up. Grab ball, put it right back up. Sweating really hard. And I talked to him, afterwards. So he didn't say anything, about the soreness or whatnot. Probably something that crept up, and I guess the Grizzlies are just taking the proper precautions of listing him on the injury report. But based off what I saw at practice, if he doesn't play, then that would be very surprising to me. Like, it would probably either be one of those things that everyone complains about, or it would be something where something really had to creep up overnight, because the guy that I saw at practice looked good. So I wouldn't have too much concern with Zach Edey. Same thing with Ja Morant. He was at practice yesterday and whatnot. But yeah, he missed this one game. I think he should be back. We'll see how they treat Jaren Jackson Jr. over the course of this back-to-back. Don't know all the details on that yet, but we know he's playing on the first leg. And I think we could agree that if the idea was, hey, he's only going to play one of the 2 games, you probably want to choose the second one going against Giannis Antetokounmpo. But so Jaren Jackson Jr. not on the injury report against the Nets. You mentioned a couple other guys. Vince Williams Jr. is going to get some imaging done here real soon. Everybody's been wondering about Vince. The perimeter defense hasn't been great, and that's one dude that we all know that could change that with his, man-to-man defense. They're going to do some imaging this week, and I know that imaging word is a little concerning to all, but
sends a shiver down my spine every time I hear it.
It gets you, right? But it's basically, remember when the initial report came out that he'll be reevaluated in whatever amount of weeks it was. That timeline is now. So this is basically the reevaluation, and it's supposed to give us more clarity on when he could be back. So we'll learn more there. He's been doing some individual stuff and whatnot. And speaking of doing individual stuff, Luke Kennard was a full participant in practice yesterday, but not really clear to return to game yet, because you know with these minutes and things, like, the Grizzlies are very careful with these dudes and whatnot. Now let me touch on that a little bit. And Joe, I love to hear what you got to say about this. But I talked to Taylor Jenkins after practice too, and I asked him a couple questions about managing these things. So I want to touch on a couple points. I know one thing that people have said to me was like, some people kind of were coming at Ja Morant. It's like, LeBron is playing, or in the 80s, these dudes played through this and these dudes played through that. And Taylor Jenkins didn't directly address that notion, but his answer to a question, about the minutes that I asked, kind of gave me something. And he basically alluded to the fact that the Grizzlies are playing so fast, this pace that they're playing at, the way that they're playing. He said there's not a lot of data points on history to kind of show them how to handle these guys who are dealing with these types of injuries while a team is playing at this speed. And look, at the end of the day, that's true. Whether you agree with how they're handling things or not, I think it was 2016 was the first season when a team averaged had a pace of over 100. For those who don't know exactly what the pace statistic is, it's simply the average amount of possessions for each team in a game. So if a pace is over 100, that means every game that the Grizzlies play in, there's an average of over 100 possessions for them and the opposing team. That's a lot of possessions. So that was never the case before. I think it was 2015, the Warriors takeover, right? The Warriors made that shift. So Taylor Jenkins said that, they're learning on the fly in a way. And that makes sense. I know everyone doesn't agree with how they're handling, Jaren Jackson Jr., but I also want to point this out. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in a real big year. We talked about this, Joe. There's a lot of money on the line here. And if you throw Jaren Jackson Jr. out there and he re-injures that hamstring and he misses 15 games and he doesn't play 65 games and he doesn't qualify for that Supermax, then look, Jaren might not be mad, but it might be some people in his business camp in his business camp that won't take that too kindly. So all things considered, whether you disagree or agree with how the Grizzlies have handled it, they were a little too cautious, I think, with Jaren Jackson Jr. in that last game, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, I do think it's fair to say the data isn't there with the tempo and the pace that they're playing at right now.
I think the Jaren Jackson Jr. point you just made about the Supermax is huge. You noted that he's not on the injury report. I'd be willing to bet they're trying to limit his minutes in game so he can play these back-to-backs and get credit for that over 65 games. I'd be stunned if that was not already
a lot of money on the line. That's like a $200 million difference for him if he makes All NBA. Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for him to sit out back-to-backs if he can afford it, but it also doesn't make sense for Memphis to run this guy into the ground, especially since he's coming off of an injury in the preseason. Maybe this is a meeting in the middle, right? We play about 25 minutes a game and you get a chance to play in these games. Kind of the Tyrese Halliburton thing from last season, if you remember correctly. Obviously, Halliburton was more banged up than Jaren currently is. I think that's a fair thing to point out. Good to hear that Luke Kennard is getting back in the swing, obviously. I'm excited that Ja is likely to play. Again, we have only seen Ja, Jaren, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart on the court once this season. We have seen them 10 times since the start of last season. So anytime that we get that sample size a little bit bigger is a good thing, even if it's a game against the Brooklyn Nets, which we'll be previewing coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're sticking around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts, talking with my co-host, Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Follow him on X at Damichael C. Make sure you're following me on X at Joe Mullinax. The Grizzlies, again, a rare home and home back-to-back. When I say home and home, this is Damichael Cole's favorite kind of back-to-back. They play at FedEx Forum, which Damichael is right in front of right now, as you can see by his background. They play right in front of FedEx Forum, and not right in front of. They play inside of FedEx Forum on Wednesday, and then they do it again on Thursday, right? So there's no travel or anything like that. They're playing 2 basketball games back to back. That's still physically taxing, but you don't have to worry about travel and airplanes and that sort of thing, which is nice. The Grizzlies take on the Nets in this contest. A resurgent, is that the right word for Ben Simmons? I don't know if resurgent is the right word. Able to play basketball again, Ben Simmons. You have Cam Thomas, who's setting the league on fire. He was everybody's kind of favorite scoring leader choice, because who else is going to score for the Brooklyn Nets? And that's kind of manifested itself these last few games. Brooklyn's on the second night of a back-to-back themselves. They are, they played in Brooklyn on Tuesday night, right? So they are going from Brooklyn to Memphis. That's not a long flight, but it's not a short flight. They're a young team. They have Zaire Williams on their roster, and Grizzlies fans will remember Zaire, of course, the one that had the gigantic water bottle on the side, the one that the Grizzlies chose instead of Trey Murphy, who just got a nice big contract extension from New Orleans. Zaire was kind of a bust in terms of a first-round pick for the Grizzlies. He's getting a chance, second draft style with the Nets. He's doing some good things at times for a team that's not really designed to be good. What are some of your keys going into tonight's contest? Obviously, Zaire's return is big up there. But what are some other things in order for Memphis to get back above 500 early on in the season against the Nets tonight?
You finally got to have a good third quarter. You got to. And this is the team to do it against. They're on the second night of a back-to-back. They're on a travel back-to-back. So they're coming from New York to all the way down here to Memphis. So, they're a younger team, right? They got a lot of young guys over there. But at the end of the day, it's a travel back-to-back. You got the previous day off. This is a scheduled win for the Grizzlies. They can go up 50 points in the first half, all I care, at this point. I outlined the numbers. So if you look at the point differential for the Grizzlies by quarter, second in the NBA in the first quarter in point differential, second in the NBA in the second quarter, last in the third quarter, 30th in the NBA. And they're not much better in the fourth quarter. Everybody keeps talking about the third quarter. They're 27th in the NBA right now in fourth quarter point differential. Like that,
it's really a second half issue more than it is a third quarter.
It's an entire second half issue. And if it's still concerning to me, because I asked Marcus Smart and Taylor Jenkins both, basically like, is there anything that you can directly finger point this issue to? And it's still super early in the season. So, it probably wouldn't be fair to expect them to say, oh, yeah, it's this. But the answers were basically like something me or you would have said without even watching the games. Like Marcus just was like, oh, yeah, it's awareness. We know we have to be better in the third quarter, and we have to keep the energy up, and those type of things, right? Taylor Jenkins points to the defense, which is fair because the defense has not been as good in the second half. But it's confusing because I talked to some players. I think it was a couple players that said, oh, yeah, the pace kind of plays a role in it. And then there were a couple other players I talked to, and they said, no, the pace has nothing to do with it. It's just attention to detail and things like that. So be honest with you, Joe, I don't think they know what the problem is. They other than just execution things, there is nothing that's – I guess it's just, hey, we got to be more, assertive and kind of recognize that we do not let our guards down. But I feel like as a pro, it's not really supposed to be a thing, right?
Can I ask a dumb question real quick? We do all this, and again, you're the smart beat writer. I'm the ignorant blogger.
Let it fly.
We talk a lot about pace.
Yeah,
and it's like they do really well with it in the first half, and then it's not so good in the second half. They struggle
like the best team
on the perimeter. They look like one of the best teams in the NBA in the first half of games. Now, riddle me this: is it possible that they're getting tired?
I think so.
I mean, are they just not in shape to run the scheme that they're trying to run?
I really think so. And Taylor is kind of. I guess you don't want to throw your players under the bus, right? I mean, you're a coach. You're the coach here. You're the one. You want to say, I didn't play Ja 30 minutes today.
You were coming out there and talking about how nobody's ever tried to play this fast, and we don't have it. We don't have enough data. We're so smart that we're speeding the game up. Well, they're human beings, right?
they're not robots.
They're the best athletes on the planet, in my opinion, right? I think NBA players are the best athletes on planet Earth. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. They're also humans that are going to get tired. Are you playing at a pace that's not sustainable? That might be a long-term question for us to track some data on here. Maybe it's not coincidental that the second halves are bad and they can't defend on the perimeter. They're dog tired, maybe.
I think that's fair because, I mean, it's just so drastically different. Like I just said, it's not like they go from second to 15th in the second half. They go from being probably the best first half team to the worst second half team. Like, that is drastic. And it's got to be energy. It's got to be, I know people want to talk about the rotations, but I've kind of, we've talked about the fact that in that Houston game, it wasn't Taylor Jenkins who pulled Ja Morant out of that game in Houston. Ja said, Coach, come get me. I'm tired. And I know there was the situation in the last game where people weren't too happy with Taylor Jenkins basically saying he had guys, and I saw it. He did have Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart at the scores table for a while, and they couldn't check into the game because the Grizzlies weren't getting stops. And people were like, oh, we'll call a timeout. And if you're in a real close game, maybe he's like, I want to hold that one of those two timeouts, for the last minute or so. And however you feel about that is however you feel about it. But yeah, Joe, I'm with you. I definitely think there's guys are tired. Like, this is super fast. Ja Morant has not, as much as he likes it, he has basically said that it's an adjustment. And if it's an adjustment for Ja Morant, I know it's an adjustment for the other guys. Desmond Bane has talked about the fact that in the past where when he has to exert so much energy on the offensive end, it takes away from his defense. So I think that's fair. And Taylor Jenkins is kind of meeting them halfway. You see that Taylor's never played 11 guys. He's playing 11 guys right now when they're healthy. And Joe, your boy John Conchar might be back in this game. So guess what? Taylor Jenkins is going to throw him in that 11-man rotation too. And I think he's trying to meet them halfway. I think he doesn't want to just call his guys out from the standpoint like, look, they're tired. And I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But it's got to be there. It's got to be something physically because you don't just go from executing at such a high level to just not execute. I mean, it's weird.
I mean, playing John Conchar doesn't help. Right. It certainly doesn't help in terms of getting your numbers up. Lord knows he's not going to get shots up. Right. Like the other day when you tagged me on X. Oh, John Conchar.
I knew that was going to happen.
From the field.
I knew that was going to happen.
Guess what didn't happen again? Him shooting the basketball, right? Didn't happen a single time after that. Again, I think that it's too early to say anything definitively, but we keep talking about this pace and how quickly they're running up and down the floor and getting extra possessions. These guys are human beings. If they've never played basketball this fast, then, and again, we're talking about a system that has had success at the Division III level of college sports. No disrespect to Division III sports. I played Division III football. I'm a Division III, athlete myself, or I used to be.
Yeah.
A little bit different than the National Basketball Association and the level of athleticism and talent that you're dealing with on a daily basis. It's an adjustment period. And, if there's ever a time to say, call me at Christmas, I think this is definitely a season for that. Not just with the personnel, but with the scheme.
And I want to add one more thing too, because I don't want to give the excuse of them being tired too, because what I've learned, I've talked to a lot of people about this whole pace thing, lately, like not even just the Grizzlies, around the league, and everyone has said, like, oh yeah, like paraphrase, like, yeah, it's cute at the beginning of the season, but everyone's not going to be playing this because the Grizzlies aren't the only team emphasizing pace. Matter of fact, if you look at the possessions per game right now, Grizzlies aren't first; they're actually third. Number one in the league in possessions is the team they actually just played against, Chicago. Chicago is number one in the NBA. Oklahoma City is number 2, and the Grizzlies are number 3. So Chicago is number 1 in the NBA in pace, well, possessions per game, excuse me. And Chicago looked drastically different in the second half. So I don't want to just give them that excuse, like, oh, they got worn down, and because Chicago's playing faster than anybody in the NBA, according to possessions per game. So it's got to be a little bit more to it. And maybe teams are just adjusting to what they're doing, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's definitely something they got to clean up in this game. If this continues for much longer, it's going to be problematic.
It's just wild that Chicago is number 1 in pace while playing a 34-year-old center and Nikola Vucevic 34 minutes a game. I guess I think you might.
How many minutes, Joe? How many minutes?
34, not 24. Like the 26-year-old or 25-year-old Jaren Jackson Jr. logged, 34 for the 34-year-old.
You don't even want to know how many Zach Edey is averaging at this point. He's averaging 14. It's less than half. I think he's about 16 minutes per game right now.
Not great at all. Thank you guys for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, as I mentioned earlier, is going to have you guys the rest of the week, Thursday and Friday. Obviously, a couple of games to break down, a game to preview. Lots of different angles you can take in these last couple episodes of the week, partner.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to finding out more clarity on the Vince Williams situation. So that's going to be a big talking point because they need him. They need Vince Williams, his perimeter defense. That last practice, I just want to say I did not expect the Grizzlies to practice before back-to-back. I've been covering this team for a few years. That's really not a usual thing. That was one of those practices, Joe, you as a coach, where it's like, we ain't taking this day off. Maybe if we would have won, we would have took this day off. I feel like that was one of those. No, and everybody that I talked to, what was the emphasis at practice? They all said defense. So we'll see, what that leads to.
Damichael's going to have you covered talking about all those fun things on the next couple episodes of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you stay locked in with him closing out the week. And make sure that you're subscribed to your new favorite newsletter because your new favorite favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Locked On Grizzlies Daily Newsletter is your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Again, that's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. We are happy as can be that our YouTube audience has grown so much, but we want our audio subscriptions to grow as well. Anywhere you get a podcast, make sure you're making us a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. We're free and available wherever you get those podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Have fun with the game tonight. Have fun with the game tomorrow since I won't be with you. Damichael will be, though, and you should be back here with Locked On Grizzlies, as you always are, each and every time an episode drops. See ya.